Happy Sunday morning, everybody. Our next question comes from Susan French. So Susan asks, why do we have so many school buses? I can give you a whole bunch more data about this. Here's the short version it's based on where kids are geographically within the district, and how long, and discussions people have about what's appropriate in terms of length of time a kid should be on a bus. And usually that conversation is most directly talking about like littler kids. So if we have a littler kid on the bus, first grader, how long should a first grader be on a bus? And at what point is the bus ride too long? And that's a value judgment, that's just a value judgment. And so I can come back with some other additional information about like our longest routes at the moment. I can tell you right now that we have seven buses that operate throughout the town. I do know, I can't verify this, but I do know, I think I've heard at town meeting before, the town talk about the Springfield might have the most miles of roads in the state, or second most. It's a lot. Anyways, there's a lot of roads to cover, and we talk about that a lot in regards to plowing and stuff like that. So there's a lot of space to cover, but it really comes down to, I mean, we could run on like two buses. We can run on a bus. In fact, there is a right to an education in Vermont, but there is no right to school busing except for students who have disabilities that would prevent them from getting to school. But for every other student, it's a privilege, not a right, to have transportation. So we could say, as a community, busing is too expensive, and end all busing, and just say kids should walk, or parents should drop kids off. And of course, the conversation we get into with that stuff is the concern is that that leaves especially kids who without means, poorer kids in our community, whose families are not in a position who live further out, and whose families are not in a position to drive kids to school every day, either because they got to get to work and they're not available at that time, or they don't have a car, or that those are the kids that would be disproportionately impacted by it. So anyways, we have those types of discussions. Usually those discussions are the most intense when we go through multi-year bus contracts, because we don't run our own buses. We contract out our buses to third-party companies. So, before we used to use First Student. When I first came to the district, that was who we used. And we have a very detailed contract with them about what our expectations are and stuff. And then we most recently, we had moved over a few years ago to Butler Bus. So we come to those contracts. We then have the ability to renew those contracts every couple of years. So that's involved in it too. But the real answer is people coming together to come to conclusions about what is an appropriate amount of time for a kid to be on a bus, and weighing that against the cost. So right now, that's why we've got what we got. We could reduce. We could cut it. We could cut a couple buses. We could cut it in half, and we just expand the routes. We make the routes longer. Kids get on the bus earlier. They get off later, and those are just value choices. So anyways, that's a short version. There's way more detailed information I can probably provide you in terms of bus routes. We have been discussing the possibility of the consolidation of some routes. Let me see here. I know that we're talking. Well, anyways, we're looking at some consolidation stuff around those bus routes when we keep reevaluating that. Now, here's the trick. Buses are going to have a huge role in what we can do in the fall, because right now, let's say we have 72. Our capacity on a bus is 72 kids, right? If we fully stack the bus. If the CDC guidelines we got not that long ago were to stay in place for the fall, we're in trouble, because we basically would have to be like, you have a row of kids, right? You have one kid in the seat. You have a kid would sit in a seat, and there'd be no other kids in the seats around them. So the way this would work would be, you'd have a kid, a student in a seat, and then across the aisle from them, nobody. In front of them, nobody, and then diagonally across in the next seat, another student. And you go back and forth down the bus. So we could fill 1/4 of the bus under those CDC regulations. So in order to transport all of our students, we might have to not double our bus fleet, but add a significant number of buses, and or not offer transportation, and or say we're only going to do certain portions of kids each day. So we're going to do half the student body. And when we try to figure that out, we would have to say, it might be Mondays and Wednesdays we're doing half the student body, and Tuesdays and Thursdays we're doing half the student body. We'd also have to design which kids we're bringing in partially based on bus routes, which is going to be a crazy amount of work to try to coordinate and figure out. So there's a lot going on with buses. Your general question, which is I'm sure is going to be connected to, it doesn't seem like there's a ton of kids on some of those buses sometimes, is true. Some of our routes are less populated than others, and that comes down to geography and these value judgments about how long kids should be on buses, which are always up for reconsideration. Hope that helps.